With the popularity of series and movies like Money Heist, Ocean's 13, or that epic bank robbery scene in the Dark Knight movie, it is obvious that despite it being a crime, people have always been drawn to the allures and dangers of great heists. Though cash theft is one of the most common forms of crimes committed, in reality, robbers can only get away with a few $1,000s the majority of the time, and that's even with a huge amount of risk involved. But of course, there have been a few exceptions in the past. After all, if you're gonna steal, why not go big or go home? So let's take a look at some of the most impressive bank robberies in history. Like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And if you're a student of criminology, go ahead and share this video with your teams. Number 10. The Raid of the British Bank of Middle East.
At the time, the British Bank of the Middle East was worth about $2 billion of today's currency.
In 1976, when Lebanon was in the middle of a civil war and its capital Beirut was thrown into chaos, a group of opportunistic individuals affiliated with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, were busy staging a bank heist. Using high explosives, the group had blasted through the walls of the abandoned bank through the church next door. With a hired team of skilled locksmiths, the group was able to crack the vault and carried off precious items, gold, jewels, and cash, worth an estimated 20 to 50 million US dollars, or more or less 150 million US dollars if we were to value it today. Number 9. The Brinks-Mat Bullion Heist.
The National described this robbery as the world's biggest peacetime robbery ever.
The Brinks-Mat warehouse robbery in November of 1983 is perhaps the largest gold heist in UK history, and surprisingly, that wasn't even the original plan. Yet despite the criminals' lack of preparation and finesse, officials have not caught the majority of the perpetrators involved, nor recovered the greater portion of the stolen goods. The success of the heist was mostly attributed to an inside help who gave quick access to the warehouse's site and also disarming the electronic security systems. Guards were quickly overwhelmed and threatened in order to secure the safe's combination. The 6 armed robbers headed by Brian Robinson and Mickey McAvoy intended for a quick steal and grab. However, upon opening the safe and discovering 6,800 gold bars that were divided into 76 cases instead of the expected 3 million pounds in cash, though it took much longer than necessary, gang members were able to flee the warehouse, taking with them the gold bars, along with several cut and uncut diamonds. The gold was eventually smelted down, and the estimated worth of all stolen goods was 26 million pounds. Number 8. Northern Bank Robbery, Belfast, UK.
Ward was transferred to McMullen's house while his family remained captive in their home.
At the time of the Northern Ireland peace process, days before Christmas in 2004, a group of armed raiders disguised as police officers invaded the homes of 2 Northern Bank executives, Chris Ward and Kevin McMullen. The 2 were ordered to go to work that Monday, act normal, and provide access to the bank. Otherwise, their families would be killed. Thus, after the day's business hours, Ward and McMullen led the robbers to the bank's underground vaults, and in a few hours, the raiders were gone, with 26.5 million pounds in tow. After weeks and months of investigations and still no clear perpetrators, the chief constable speculated the direct involvement of the members of the Irish Republican Army, IRA, which Sinn Féin officials declined. Despite its political ramifications and the number of investigators and suspects involved in this complex crime, the case remains unsolved and without any convicted robbers until this day. Number 7. The 1987 Knightsbridge Safe Deposit Heist.
Detectives said they'd never know the exact amount because some depositors wouldn't have wanted the Inland Revenue to know what was in their boxes.
Sometimes the most successful heists don't need to be too complicated. Valerio Visay, an Italian criminal mastermind who was also responsible for 50 different armed robberies in his lifetime, had entered the bank under the guise of opening a safety deposit box. At the right moment, Visay and his armed accomplice had subdued the guards and the manager and was able to open the vault long enough to walk away with at least 62 million pounds worth of cash, jewelry, and other precious articles. The total amount is valued today at approximately 97 million US dollars. Visay had successfully fled to South America, but fortunately he didn't get to roam free that long, as he was eventually apprehended by the British authorities when he momentarily went back to visit England. Number 6. The Banco Central Burglary in Fortaleza.
They tear apart the ATM lobby of a bank.
One of the largest cash thefts and certainly the most creative and arduous in this list is the 2005 heist in Fortaleza, Brazil, and it's a memorable one. Posing as a group of landscape and maintenance workers, a group of robbers had rented out a commercial property situated near the bank. For 3 months, the group had dug a 256-foot air-conditioned tunnel positioned underneath the bank. Then in one fateful weekend, the team dug up through reinforced concrete into the bank's vault, successfully looting $70 million worth of cash. Majority of the cash was never recovered, and only a few of the suspects were eventually apprehended. Number 5. The 2006 Kent Securitas Depot Heist.
The incredible story of the £50 million Securitas robbery.
The person's responsible for this crime.
As Britain's biggest cash robbery to date, this heist definitely deserves a spot in the top 5 of the list. The Securitas Depot isn't technically a bank, rather it's a facility that holds cash deposited to the Bank of England, for protection. The robbery was headed by one of Britain's most promising MMA fighters, Lee Murray. Several weeks before the job, an inside man had recorded the building's layout. The depot's manager and family were abducted and threatened at gunpoint, so Murray and his gang could gain access. Suited in police uniforms and masks, the gang loaded the banknotes into the back of the truck while the hostages were left locked inside cash cages. In less than 2 hours, the group was out and had successfully stolen a total of £53,116,760 British pounds, which is about $92 million US dollars. Lee Murray was arrested in Morocco and sentenced to 10 years in prison, which after a failed escape attempt was then extended to 25 years. Number 4. San Miguel Valley Bank Telluride. Relatively, this isn't an enormous bank steal, but it's definitely one for the history books since it was Butch Cassidy's very first bank heist. For those who don't know, Butch Cassidy is the leader of the Wild Butch Gang, one of the most notorious robbery gangs of its era. They were famous for committing train and bank thefts in the 1800s and were the prime target of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, an independent police force. The San Miguel Valley Bank heist went down like any other classic theft in its time. Cassidy, along with his gang members, broke into the bank, aimed the gun at the teller, and stuffed approximately $20,000 in cash in sacks and successfully fled the crime scene. This was going to be the beginning of a 20-year thieving career before he reportedly died in a shootout in Argentina. Today, the stolen money would equal about $500,000. Number 3. Dar es Salaam Bank Heist, Baghdad.
It's not known if there's any larger organisation behind the robbers, but the government fear that if that amount of money got into the hands of anti-government.
In this world, sometimes it's those who you trust the most that eventually bite you. The robbery of the Dar es Salaam Bank in Baghdad is one of the biggest inside jobs in history, but perhaps what's more astonishing as compared to others on our list, this required almost no effort or retaliation at all. In 2007, the bank was casually robbed by the very guards that protected it, who took more than $280 million, all in cash. The local police and an official of the Interior Ministry had stated that approximately 3 guards had engineered the entire heist. There were no chances of catching the bandits, as it was suspected that the guards might have been connected with militias, as it seemed they'd easily pass through the city's numerous checkpoints. All in all, the details of the case are still somewhat shrouded in mystery, and unfortunately, so are the location of the cash and the thieves. Number 2. The North Hollywood Shootout.
And they start shooting at anything that moved. Uniformed police officers were outgunned.
Okay, this may not be the most successful heist, but it is one of the most brutal. Nearly 2,000 rounds of ammunition that led to the death of the 2 robbers and the injury of 8 civilians and 12 police officers, including the destruction of several vehicles and properties. Not to mention that the event's aftermath had called for the immediate revamping of LAPD's weapon and overall firepower. At about 9 o'clock in the morning, Larry Phillips and Emilian Matasarinu had robbed the North Hollywood branch of Bank in America in 1997. With a getaway car, their escape had led to a deadly shootout that continued to nearby residential streets. It was obvious that the 2 suspects were more heavily armed and protected than the police forces chasing them. This led to one of the most intense gun battles in U.S. police history, with the suspects later being killed. Number 1. Central Bank of Iraq. Saddam Hussein is infamously known for a number of atrocities at this point, and it may not even be surprising to know that he's also responsible for the largest bank heist in robbery history. And when we say the largest, we mean about $900 million to about $100 billion US worth of cash and assets. Ironically, this huge heist didn't even use guns or any forms of violence, but just a simple note. In March 2003, at about 4 a.m., before American troops could set foot on the Iraqi capital, Hussein had already instructed his son, Qusay, to lead the cash withdrawal. The bank's governor was handed a handwritten note stating that the money should never fall into foreign hands. It looks like the ex-Iraqi dictator really saw it as his own personal piggy bank. Without much force, 3 large trucks were filled with cash containing metal boxes for several hours, never to be seen again. To this day, no one knows the exact location of where the loot was taken. However, it is reported that about $650 million were found in one of Hussein's palace raids.